This is Munson with Munson Music, and we're going to talk about how you can play an A augmented chord across the fretboard. And we're going to start off with kind of an A octave and kind of work our shapes from A notes across the fretboard. And we're basically going to just be attaching two shapes to those. We're going to take our root on the low E string for the fifth, so all these are kind of A augmented chords. And then from there, we're going to be adding in our major third shape. So kind of low E string on the fifth fret to the low E string on the 9 would be a third shape. And then we're going to be adding in a sharp 5 shape, but you can think about it as a flat 6. It's the same thing. Sound-wise, different name, sounds the same. So we might want to start by just kind of drilling those shapes. So we can take the major third shapes kind of from the low E string and kind of see how many of those we can find. And then we can take D string on the 7 and kind of work third shapes to the low E string on the 9, and then to the A string on the 4, and then D string to the G, or to the D string on the 11th fret, or we could go to the G string on the 6th fret, or we could kind of take our high E string on the 5th fret and kind of work that third shape to the G string 6th fret, or we could work that to the B string on the 2nd fret, or we could take the G string on the 2nd and work the major third shape to the B string 2nd fret, or the G string on the 2nd to the A string on the 4th fret. So we could kind of take each A note and then just kind of try and see what major third shapes you can find around those. Can be a cool way to kind of drill those. Just to kind of work all those shapes. And then from there, the shape that and then we can kind of take our B string on the 10 and kind of and then drill it out for third shapes. So we'd have the D string on the 11, or you could work the B on the 10, the G on the 6, or we could work the B on the 10 to the B on the 14, or we could work the B string on the 10 to the high E9. That's kind of a third shape. Or we could take the A string on the 12 and kind of work that to the low E on the 9 as a third shape, or the A string on the 16, or the D string on the 11, and then we could take the G string on the 14 and work that to the A16, or the D string on the 11th fret, or the G string on the 18th fret, or to the B string on the 14th fret. So you can kind of work each A note and then just try and find what thirds you can find around shape-wise. And then the shape that we're going to be adding to that is kind of our flat 6 or our sharp 5 shape, where you go to the A string on the 8th fret. So kind of working out, if you know the fifths pretty well, it's like one fret over from those. So we'd have from the low E string 5th, we'd have the A string 8th for our sharp 5. Or we'd have the low E string to the D string on the 3rd fret for a sharp 5. And then we could take our D string on the 7th fret and kind of work our sharp 5 shape to the A string on the 8th fret. Or we could work that same, or we could even work, take that back to the D string on the 3rd. Or we could work that to the G string on the 10. It's kind of a sharp 5. Or we could work that to the B string on the 6th fret. It's kind of a sharp 5. And then we could take the high E on the 5th fret and kind of work that to our B string on the 6th fret, kind of for a sharp 5. Or we could take the G string on the 2nd fret and kind of work that to the B string 6th fret for a sharp 5. Or we could work that to the D string on the 3rd fret for kind of a sharp 5. So you're thinking root, sharp 5, and then kind of taking your next A and then kind of thinking those same shapes. Root, sharp 5, root, sharp 5, root, sharp 5, root, sharp 5. And then we could kind of take our B string and kind of work that same idea. So we could kind of work our sharp 5 by going to the G string on the 10, or we could go to the high E on the 13th fret for kind of a sharp 5 shape, or we could work that same string idea and kind of go to the B string on the 6th, or we could take the A string on the 12 and kind of work our sharp 5 to the low E 13, or we could work it to the same string idea, or we could work that to the D string on the 15, or we could work that to our G string on the 10. And then we could take our G string on the 14 as our root and kind of work our sharp 5 shape to the D string 15, or we do our same string to the G string 10, or we could do our B string on the 18 as kind of a sharp 5. And then we'd be back to kind of our other look at like little augmented chords actually by taking and kind of working small voicings. And so, for instance, you could take the low E string on the 5th fret and then go to the A string on the 4th fret for your 3rd, D string on the 3rd fret for your sharp 5, and you kind of have a little augmented chord. Now, the cool thing about augmented chords is they're completely symmetrical as far as how they split the octave. So it's a major 3rd shape from the root to the 3rd. It's also a major 3rd shape from the 3rd to the sharp 5, and it's also a major 3rd shape from the sharp 5 or the flat 6 to the root again. So you actually end up with this cool little interesting strange diagonal pattern kind of across the guitar, working this arpeggio. So little pieces, you'd have that root 3 sharp 5, but if we take that shape and just slide it up a major 3rd shape, now you're working the D string on the 7th fret, sharp 5's on the A string on the 8th fret, and the 3rd's on the low E string. Or, yeah, 3rd's on the low E string on the 5th or 9th fret. That's our next inversion. So it looks exactly the same, but now you're trying to think about it as a root and a sharp 5 and then a root. So a 3rd, sharp 5, root. So it's kind of a first inversion, augmented chord. And then if we take that shape and slide it up, end up with what would be the sharp 5 and then the root and then the 3rd. So it's kind of interesting because a lot of our shapes actually we end up moving our shapes by a major 3rd, and we're in another version of the chord. So it's kind of cool that way. So we can take those same shapes and look at them on our A and D and G string. So you'd have the A string on the 12 for your root, D string on the 11 for your 3rd, G string on the 10 for a sharp 5. Or we could kind of take that, and if we split that shape down to a first finger on the G string for your root, then you'd have D string on the 3rd fret for your sharp 5, and then the A string on the 4th fret for your 3rd, so that's your 3-5 root voicing. And then if we take that shape and then move it by a 3rd shape, then we'd have our D string for our root on the 7, G string on the 6 for the 3rd, and the A string on the 8th fret for the sharp 5. So we end up with that same kind of scenario where you can just take that shape and then slide it by major 3rd, and you end up with the other inversions of the chord. It's very cool. And then from there, we could go to the G string on the 2nd fret to look at the next couple strings. And then we have our sharp 5 on the D string on the 3rd fret, B string on the 2nd fret is our 3rd. So now our shape has changed. Actually, the B string is kind of shifted things one fret to the right. That's what the B string's there for. So I got first finger on the G string 2nd, 2nd finger on the B string 2nd, 3rd finger on the D string 3rd to kind of make my A augmented. But if we take that shape and we slide it by a major 3rd, we end up with our next inversion. So then we have a root on the D string 7, G string on the 6, B string on the 6 for an A augmented chord. And then we take that and slide that by a major 3rd shape, we end up with our next inversion where we got A as the root on the B string 10, G string 10 is the sharp 5, and the D string on the 11 is the 3rd. And if we slide that by another major 3rd shape, then we're back to kind of our 3-5 root, or our sharp 5 root 3. So kind of our second inversion. And then if we take the next chords, then we take the on the G and the B and the E string, we could start with the G string on the 2nd fret for our root, 2nd fret on the B string for the 3rd, and then first finger is the high E string on the 1st fret for the sharp 5. And that looks like an A minor chord, but you're on the wrong strings, and that's a little augmented chord on the G and the B and the E string. So now we're playing root 3 sharp 5, or if we slide that by a major 3rd shape, then we end up with a 3 and a sharp 5 and a root. And if we slide that by a major 3rd shape, then we end up with our sharp 5 root 3 voicing. And if we move that by a major 3rd, we end up with our root 3 sharp 5 voicing again. So augmenteds can be kind of an interesting thing that way. So we could kind of work a jam over those, and then kind of work kind of little pieces of that. And you may want to start with just little arpeggios, kind of taking just that root 3 sharp 5 and just kind of working just those shapes, just to kind of get used to moving those. Root 3 sharp 5. And you end up with that cool little diagonal thing shape-wise, so you may want to kind of play around with that, or combinations of. And as long as you're moving by a major 3rd So you might want to kind of play around with kind of that augmented chord or arpeggio too and kind of see what you can say with it. So good luck!